The council station floated in the darkness of space like a massive ring of silver and glass. Inside, representatives from 47 different alien species worked and argued and made deals that shaped the galaxy. Earth had joined this group only 3 years ago, after humanity proved it could fight and win against pirates on the frontier worlds. Now humans walked the same halls as creatures with 4 arms, beings made of light and things that looked like walking trees. Ji-won Kim stood at attention near the main conference room, trying not to let his exhaustion show. He had been on duty for 14 hours straight. His uniform was crisp, his posture perfect, but his mind kept wandering. He was a corporal in Earth's security forces, assigned to protect Ambassador Hyon during these important trade talks. It was supposed to be a simple job. Stand still. Look professional. Don't cause problems. Ji-won was usually good at his job. He had served on 3 different stations and never received a single complaint. But he had one weakness that his commanding officer always warned him about. Sometimes, when he was tired or distracted, words came out of his mouth before his brain could stop them. It had gotten him in trouble before, but never anything serious. A few awkward moments with other soldiers, some jokes that didn't land well, nothing that damaged his career. Inside the conference room, Ambassador Hyon sat across from the Veltari delegation. The Veltari were one of the most advanced species in the galaxy. They had technology that could cure diseases humanity still struggled with. They had ships that could cross the galaxy in weeks instead of months. And they were notoriously difficult to negotiate with because they followed strict rules about behavior and respect. The leader of the Veltari delegation was High Counselor Aaron. She stood 7 feet tall, with skin that looked like it was made of crystal. The surface of her body shifted colors constantly, moving from blue to green to purple. Ji-won had been briefed that these color changes showed emotions, but he didn't understand the code. All he knew was that she was striking to look at. Her proportions were humanoid, but somehow perfect. Like an artist had designed every line and curve. Her figure would have turned heads even among humans despite the alien features. Ji-won had been trying not to stare all evening. It felt rude, and he knew the negotiations were delicate. Earth needed this trade agreement. The medicine and technology the Veltari could provide would save millions of human lives. He couldn't afford to mess this up by being unprofessional. A younger diplomat named Minho Park approached him quietly. Minho looked nervous, constantly adjusting his glasses and checking his tablet. He leaned close to Ji-won and whispered, "Try not to stare at the Veltari. I just learned that their culture considers direct observation of someone's body to be really intimate, like extremely personal. It's almost like a marriage proposal to them if you study someone's form too carefully." Ji-won felt his face heat up. Had he been staring? He thought he had been subtle, but maybe not. He was so tired that his judgment might be off. He wanted to respond to Minho, to acknowledge the warning, but his brain was foggy from the long shift. What Ji-won didn't realize was that his translator earpiece was still set to the open channel. Every device in the diplomatic area was connected, so that translations could happen in real time. When he opened his mouth to mutter what he thought was a private response, his words broadcast to everyone in the conference room. "Hard not to when she's built like a work of art," Ji-won said quietly, his exhausted brain not filtering properly. "I mean, look at those proportions. Even with the crystal skin and the height difference, that's just—" He trailed off as he noticed the sudden silence. The conference room had been filled with the low murmur of diplomatic conversation and translation. Now nothing. Complete silence. Ji-won's stomach dropped as he realized what must have happened. His hand flew to his earpiece and he saw the tiny green light that indicated an open channel. No. Oh no. Every person in that room, human and alien alike, had heard him. Ambassador Hyun's face had gone pale. The other human diplomats looked horrified. And the Veltari delegation had all turned to stare at him. Their crystalline bodies shifted to colors that Ji-won didn't recognize, but he was pretty sure none of them were good. 2 Veltari guards reached for weapons at their belts. They looked at High Counselor Aaron, clearly waiting for orders. Ji-won felt sweat run down his back under his uniform. This was bad. This was possibly interstellar incident bad. He had just insulted their leader in front of everyone, or propositioned her, or done something that his briefing had probably warned about if he had paid better attention. He should apologize. He should say something, but what? How did you take back words that the entire diplomatic gathering had heard? How did you explain that you were just tired and stupid, and didn't mean to broadcast your thoughts about an alien dignitary's appearance? Ambassador Hyun stood up slowly, his hands raised in a placating gesture. High Counselor Aaron, please accept my deepest apologies. Corporal Kim spoke out of turn and without proper cultural awareness. His comments were inappropriate and silence. Aaron's voice cut through the room like a blade. It wasn't loud, but it commanded absolute attention. She rose from her seat, her crystalline body catching the light and throwing rainbow patterns across the walls. She was terrifying and beautiful at the same time, and Ji-won couldn't look away even though he wanted to. Aaron's skin shifted through a rapid series of colors. Blues and greens and purples and shades Ji-won didn't have names for. He wondered if he was watching her get angry in Veltari body language. He wondered if those guards were about to arrest him or worse. But then something unexpected happened. Aaron's colors settled into a pattern that looked almost like amusement. A soft pink mixed with gold, pulsing gently across her crystalline features. She raised one long-fingered hand and her guard stepped back. Corporal Kim, she said, her translated voice calm and measured. You have committed what we consider a grave breach of protocol. To speak of another's form in such a direct manner is, in our culture, an expression of the deepest intimacy. What you said would be equivalent to a proposal of bonding among my people. Ji-won wanted to disappear. He wanted the floor to open up and swallow him. This was so much worse than he thought. He had basically proposed marriage to an alien high counselor in front of the entire diplomatic corps. However, Aaron continued, and her skin shifted to brighter golds. You have also done something that no diplomat has achieved in 3 solar cycles of negotiations with my people. You have spoken with complete, unfiltered honesty. There was no calculation in your words, no hidden meaning, no political strategy, just raw, genuine observation. The room remained silent. Everyone seemed as confused as Ji-won felt. Where was this going? This is refreshing, Aaron said. And now there was definitely something like amusement in her tone. Every species we negotiate with speaks in circles. They hide their true thoughts behind layers of diplomatic language. They say one thing and mean another. But you, Corporal Kim, you spoke exactly what you thought, even though it was inappropriate. Even though it broke our customs, you were honest. She stepped closer and Ji-won fought the urge to back away. She was so tall that he had to look up to meet her eyes, which glowed with an inner light. I propose something unprecedented, Aaron said, turning to address Ambassador Hyun. Corporal Kim will serve as cultural liaison for the remainder of these negotiations. If humanity values honesty to the point of social suicide, then perhaps we have misjudged your species. Prove to me that humans can navigate truth without the deception that plagues other races. Ambassador Hyun looked like he wanted to argue but saw no way out. High Counselor Corporal Kim has no diplomatic training. He's a security officer. Exactly, Aaron replied. He is unpolished, unfiltered, that is what I want. Do we have an agreement? Hyun glanced at Ji-won, his expression a mix of sympathy and resignation. We accept your terms, Ji-won's mind reeled. In the span of 2 minutes, he had gone from guard duty to being responsible for the most important diplomatic negotiation in recent human history. All because he couldn't keep his mouth shut when he was tired. He looked at High Counselor Aaron, at the way her crystalline skin still pulsed with those gold tones, at the slight tilt of her head that might have been curiosity, and he realized that his simple job had just become impossibly complicated. The meeting ended an hour later and Ji-won still felt like he was in shock. He walked through the corridors of the council station beside Ambassador Hyun, who had barely spoken to him since Aaron's announcement. The other diplomats kept their distance, whispering to each other and shooting him looks that ranged from sympathy to anger. My office, now, Hyun said quietly when they reached the human delegation's wing. It wasn't a request. Ji-won followed the ambassador into a small sterile room with a desk and a few chairs. As soon as the door closed, Hyun sat down heavily and rubbed his face with both hands. For a long moment, he just sat there in silence. Ji-won stood at attention, waiting for the reprimand he knew was coming. Do you have any idea what you've done? Hyun finally asked. His voice was tired rather than angry, which somehow made it worse. We've been working on this trade agreement for 8 months. 8 months of careful negotiation, of learning their customs, of building trust, and you nearly destroyed it all with one careless comment. Sir, Ji-won began, but Hyun held up a hand. I'm not finished. What you did should have ended your career. It should have created an interstellar incident. The Veltari should have walked away from the negotiations entirely. Jan paused, looking at Jiwan with an expression that might have been bewilderment. But instead, somehow, you've become central to the entire process. High Counselor Aaron wants you as the primary liaison. Do you understand what that means? Jiwan shook his head. He barely understood anything that had happened in the last 2 hours. It means that for the next week you will be working directly with Aaron and her senior advisors. You'll be explaining human culture to them. You'll be learning their protocols and customs. Every interaction you have could make or break this agreement. Hyun stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. I can't decide if she's brilliant or insane. Maybe both. Why would she want me? Jiwan asked. I'm the one who insulted her. That's exactly why, a new voice said from the doorway. A woman in a diplomatic uniform entered. She was older, with gray streaking her black hair, and she carried herself with the confidence of someone who had seen everything. I'm Cultural Advisor Yoonji Choi. I've been studying the Veltari for 15 years. She pulled up a chair and sat down, motioning for Jiwon to do the same. The Veltari have a complicated relationship with honesty. In their culture, truth is sacred. But they've been dealing with other alien species for centuries, and nearly every one of those species has lied to them, manipulated them, or tried to take advantage of their technology. Yoonji pulled out a tablet and brought up files on the Veltari. They've become cynical. They expect deception now. Every word in a negotiation is analyzed for hidden meanings. Every gesture is examined for secret signals. They trust no one because they've been betrayed too many times. But I didn't mean to be honest, Jiwon said. I just spoke without thinking. Exactly. Yoonji smiled. That's what makes it valuable. You didn't calculate your words. You didn't consider the political implications. You just said what you actually thought. And that's so rare in galactic diplomacy that Aaron doesn't know how to respond to it. She's intrigued. Ambassador Hyun turned from the window. Advisor Choi will be working with you to prepare for your new role. You have 12 hours before your first official meeting with High Counselor Aaron. I suggest you use that time to learn everything you can about Veltari culture, because if you mess this up again, there won't be a third chance. The next 12 hours were the most intense of Jiwon's life. Yoonji Choi didn't let him sleep. Instead, she filled his head with information about the Veltari, their history, their customs, their complex system of colors, and what each meant. He learned that what he had done was the equivalent of walking up to a stranger and declaring romantic interest in the most direct way possible. Their entire concept of intimacy revolves around observation and appreciation, a form, Yoonji explained. When Veltari choose bonding partners, they spend months just looking at each other, studying every detail. To comment on someone's physical appearance the way you did is something they would only do with someone they intended to spend their life with. Jiwon felt his face burn. So she thinks I want to marry her? No, she knows you didn't understand what you were doing. But she also recognizes that your comment came from genuine observation, not political manipulation. That interests her because it's authentic. Yoonji paused. The Veltari are searching for species they can truly trust. Your accident might have given them hope that humanity could be that species. When Jiwon finally walked into the private meeting room the next day, he felt more prepared, but also more nervous. High Counselor Aaron was already there, along with 2 of her advisors. Their crystalline bodies reflected the soft lighting, creating patterns on the walls like moving water. Aaron gestured to a seat across from her. Corporal Kim, thank you for joining us. Thank you for this opportunity, High Counselor, Jiwon said carefully, using the formal phrases Yoonji had taught him. He sat down, trying to maintain eye contact without staring at her form. It was harder than it sounded. I want to begin by explaining why I made my unusual request yesterday, Aaron said. Her skin shifted to a calm blue. My people have been negotiating with your Ambassador Hyun for many months. He is professional, careful, he says all the correct things. But we do not know if he speaks truth or if he simply speaks what he thinks we want to hear. One of her advisors, whose name Jiwon learned was Kane, added, This is the problem we face with all species. How do we know what is real and what is performance? When you spoke yesterday, Aaron continued, you were not performing. You were not trying to impress us or manipulate us. You simply spoke your true thoughts. This is valuable to us, even if those thoughts broke our customs. Jiwon took a breath. Yoonji had told him that in this new role, he needed to continue being honest. even when it was uncomfortable. "High Counselor, I need to apologize. I didn't know that my words would be so offensive to your culture. I was tired and careless. My comment about your appearance was inappropriate." "Why did you make the observation?" Erin asked. Her colors shifted to something Ji-won didn't recognize. "What made you comment on my form?" This was dangerous territory, but Yoonji had been clear. Honesty was what Erin wanted. "You're striking to look at," Ji-won said simply. "By human standards, even accounting for our differences, your proportions and the way you carry yourself would be considered beautiful." I noticed, and I was foolish enough to say it out loud without thinking about the consequences. The room was quiet for a moment. Then Erin's skin shifted to that gold color again. "Beautiful. This is an aesthetic judgment in human culture. Yes, it means pleasing to look at, attractive. Humans appreciate physical appearance, though we also value many other qualities." Ji-won was trying to be educational without making things worse. "Interesting," Erin said. "In our culture, we do not use such simple words. We have 17 different terms for types of form appreciation, each with specific meanings, but I think I understand your basic concept." Kane leaned forward. "Tell us, Corporal Kim, why do humans value honesty? Your species has a reputation for emotion and impulse. Does this make you naturally truthful or naturally deceptive?" It was a test question. Ji-won could feel it. He thought carefully before answering. Humans can be both. We're capable of lying, and many humans do lie for different reasons. But we also value truth because we're social creatures. We live in groups. We depend on each other. When someone lies to us, it breaks trust, and broken trust destroys communities. So most humans try to be honest, at least with people we care about. And yet your diplomats speak in careful, measured words, another advisor pointed out. They do not share full truths. Diplomacy is different, Ji-won admitted. In negotiations, everyone is trying to get the best deal for their side. So they're careful about what they reveal. It's not exactly lying, but it's not complete honesty either. It's a game with rules. Erin's colors brightened. Yes, this is what we have learned to expect. Every species plays this game. But you, Corporal Kim, you do not seem skilled at this game. Ji-won laughed despite himself. No, High Counselor. I'm really not. That's why I'm usually just a guard. I'm much better at following orders than at diplomatic conversations. Perhaps that is why you are valuable to us, Erin said. She stood and her advisors stood with her. We will meet again tomorrow. For this week, I want you to tell us about humanity. Not the careful diplomatic version. The real version. Tell us about your people's flaws and strengths. Tell us what makes humans different from other species. Can you do this? Ji-won stood as well. I can try, High Counselor. That is all we ask, Erin said. As she moved toward the door, she paused and looked back at him. Your accidental honesty yesterday was refreshing. I hope you can maintain that quality intentionally. It is rarer than you might think. After they left, Ji-won sat back down and let out a long breath. He had survived the first meeting, but he had 6 more days of this, and each conversation would be just as challenging. He thought about what Aaron had said about his accidental honesty being valuable. Maybe his weakness for speaking without thinking wasn't such a weakness after all. At least not here. At least not with the Veltari. The next 3 days passed in a blur of meetings, conversations, and cultural lessons that went both ways. Ji-won spent hours each day with Aaron and her advisors, answering questions about humanity that ranged from simple to deeply philosophical. He also learned more about the Veltari than he had ever expected to know. On the 3rd day, they met in a garden area of the station. The Veltari had requested the location, explaining that they found natural settings more conducive to honest conversation. Ji-won sat on a bench near a small fountain while Aaron stood nearby, her crystalline form catching the artificial sunlight. Tell me about human conflict, Aaron said. Your species has a reputation for violence, for war. Yet you also claim to value peace and cooperation. How do you reconcile this contradiction? Ji-won had known this question would come eventually. Yoonji had warned him that humanity's violent history was a concern for many alien species. We don't reconcile it, he said honestly. Humans are contradictory. We can be incredibly cruel and incredibly kind. Sometimes the same person on different days. We fight wars over ideas we can't even touch. Freedom, honor, justice, religion. And those wars cost millions of lives. Then why do you fight them? Kane asked. He was always present at these meetings, carefully watching and listening. Because those ideas matter to us more than life sometimes, Jiwan said. Humans would rather die than live without freedom. We'll sacrifice ourselves for honor. We'll fight to protect people we've never met because we believe it's the right thing to do. He paused, trying to find the right words. It's not logical. I know it's not. But it's who we are. Erin's color shifted to a deep purple. Jiwan had learned this meant she was thinking carefully. You had a sister, she said. Advisor Choi mentioned this in a briefing. She died in military service. Jiwan felt his chest tighten. He hadn't expected Erin to bring up Sora. Yes, 3 years ago. She was defending a colony world called New Jeju from pirate attacks. Had she ever been to this colony world before? Erin asked. No. She had never even met anyone from there. She was assigned to protect them, and she did. When the pirates breached the defense line, she held a position that allowed civilians to evacuate. She saved over 200 people. Jiwan's voice was steady, but his hands gripped the edge of the bench. She didn't have to stay. She could have retreated with the others. But she chose to hold the line. Why? It was a simple question. But Jiwan could hear genuine confusion in Erin's tone. If she had no connection to these people, why sacrifice herself? Because they needed help and she could give it. That's reason enough for most humans. Jiwan looked up at Erin. I know it seems irrational, but humans are irrational about protecting others. It's instinct for us. When someone is in danger, we help. We don't always think about it. We just do it. The garden was quiet except for the sound of the fountain. Then Erin did something Jiwan had never seen her do before. She sat down on the bench beside him. It felt significant, though he wasn't sure why. My people do not understand this impulse, she said softly. Her skin had shifted to a color like deep blue water. We value logic and calculation. We help others when there is mutual benefit. We form alliances based on advantage. But to sacrifice without gain? To help strangers without expectation of return? This is foreign to us. Is that why you're interested in humans? Jiwan asked. Because we're different? Partially, Erin admitted. But also because we have been deceived by logical species. They calculate their advantages. They make promises they do not keep. They betray alliances when more profitable options appear. Perhaps a species that acts on instinct and emotion might be more reliable than one that acts on pure calculation. Over the next few days, the conversations deepened. Erin asked Jiwan about human art, human music, human love, and family. She wanted to understand why humans created beauty when it served no survival purpose, why they formed deep emotional bonds that caused them pain when severed, why they sometimes acted against their own self-interest to help others. Jiwan answered as honestly as he could, even when his answers revealed human flaws. He told her about wars fought for greed, about times when humans had failed to help when they should have, about cruelty and hatred that still existed in human society, but he also told her about human courage and compassion and hope. Humans are messy, he finally said during one long conversation. We're not logical like you. We make mistakes. We let emotions guide us when we should think things through, but that messiness is also our strength. We adapt, we improvise. We keep trying even when logic says we should give up. Erin listened to all of this with attention that felt intense. Her colors changed constantly, responding to different parts of the conversation. Jiwan noticed that she showed the gold tones more often now. He had learned that meant interest and respect. On the 5th day, something shifted between them. They were discussing human concepts of beauty and art when Erin asked a personal question. Do you still find my form aesthetically pleasing? Now that you understand what such observations mean to my people? Jiwan could have deflected the question. He could have given a diplomatic answer. But he had committed to honesty with her. Yes, he said simply. Understanding your culture doesn't change what I see. You're still striking to look at. But now I also see other things. Your intelligence, your patience in dealing with me when I'm sure I'm frustrating. The way you genuinely want to understand humanity instead of just judging us. Erin's entire crystalline form seemed to glow brighter for a moment. These are form observations of a different type, she said. Not physical, but essential. Among my people, this would be considered a deeper compliment than your first accidental statement. I didn't mean it as a compliment, Jiwan said. I just meant it as truth. Perhaps truth and compliment are the same thing, Erin replied. Her skin showed colors Jiwan was beginning to recognize as contentment. Later that day, Ji-won met with Yoonji Choi to debrief about the week's progress. She seemed pleased with how things were going. "You're doing well. The Veltari advisors are sending positive reports back to their homeworld. There's talk of expanding the trade agreement to include military technology sharing." "Really?" Ji-won was surprised. "I thought military tech was off the table." "It was, but you've convinced them that humans might be trustworthy enough to be true allies, not just trading partners." Yoonji smiled. "Do you realize what you're accomplishing here? You're changing galactic politics just by being yourself." "I'm just answering questions," Ji-won protested. "You're showing them that humanity has value beyond our military strength or our resources. You're showing them our character." Yoonji's expression became more serious. "But Ji-won, I need to warn you about something. The Veltari advisors are concerned about High Counselor Erin. They say her colors are showing patterns they've never seen before when she's with you. They think she's developing what they call a form bond attachment." "What does that mean?" "It's complicated. It's not romantic in the way humans would understand, but it's a deep connection. They're worried it might affect her judgment." Yoonji looked at him carefully. "They're also concerned that you might be developing feelings for her." "Are you?" Ji-won didn't answer immediately. He thought about his conversations with Erin, the way she listened, the way her colors brightened when he explained something she found interesting, the way she had sat beside him in the garden when he talked about his sister. "I respect her," he finally said. "I admire her. She's brilliant and patient and genuinely curious about things." "Is that feelings?" "I don't know. She's an alien. We're completely different species. Whatever I might feel, it couldn't lead anywhere." "Don't be so sure," Yoonji said quietly. "The galaxy is full of things we thought were impossible until someone did them. Just be careful. Both of your positions are delicate right now." On the 6th day, Erin invited Ji-won to a private meeting without her advisors. They met in a small observation room with windows looking out at the stars. It felt intimate in a way their other meetings hadn't. "I wanted to speak with you alone," Erin said. "Away from advisors and diplomats and formal protocols." "Is this acceptable?" "Of course," Ji-won said. He was curious about what she wanted to discuss. Erin stood at the window, her crystalline body reflecting starlight. "This week has been enlightening. You have taught me much about humanity. But you have also taught me something about myself and my people. We have become so focused on logic and calculation that we have forgotten the value of genuine connection." She turned to face him. "Your sister sacrificed herself for strangers. This would be illogical to most Veltari, but I'm beginning to understand that it represents something valuable, a willingness to act for others without calculation of personal benefit. This is what my people need to rediscover." "I'm glad I could help you see that," Ji-won said. "You have done more than help me see it. You have demonstrated it in your interactions with me. You could have been calculating. You could have tried to manipulate me for political advantage. Instead, you have simply been honest, even when that honesty revealed weaknesses or flaws." Erin's colors shifted to that gold tone again. "This is why my advisors are concerned. They believe I am forming an attachment that goes beyond professional respect." Ji-won's heart beat faster. "Are they right?" "Yes," Erin said simply. "By my people's standards, I am showing sign. The 7th day of negotiations should have been the final day. The trade agreement was nearly complete. Ambassador Hyun had reported that the Veltari seemed ready to sign. Everything was going better than anyone had hoped. Then Ji-won found the documents. He had returned to his temporary quarters late in the evening, exhausted from another long day of cultural exchange meetings. His small room was neat and organized exactly as he had left it that morning, except for one thing. A datapad sat on his desk that hadn't been there before. Ji-won picked it up carefully. It was a standard council station device, the kind anyone could use. But someone had left it here deliberately. Why? He activated the screen and saw a folder of classified documents. Earth military files, strategic plans, technical specifications for weapon systems, and a detailed analysis of how human technology could be adapted to Veltari power systems to create devastating military capabilities. His stomach dropped as he read through the files. This was bad, really bad. The documents made it look like Earth was planning to take Veltari technology and militarize it. Like the trade agreement was just a cover for humans to gain access to advanced alien tech for military purposes. If the Veltari saw these files, they would think humanity had been lying all along. that everything Jiwon had told Aaron about human trustworthiness was false. But something about the documents felt wrong. The writing style was off. The classifications didn't match proper Earth military protocols. And most importantly, why would someone leave them here for him to find? If these were real classified documents that someone had stolen, they wouldn't just leave them on his desk. This was a plant. Someone wanted him to find these, but why? Jiwon sat on his bed and thought through the possibilities. If he hid the documents and said nothing, he would be complicit in whatever scheme this was. If the documents were later discovered in his quarters, he would look guilty. But if he revealed them, even to explain they were planted, the damage would be done. The Veltari would see the contents. They would have doubts about human intentions. The trust he and Aaron had built over the past week could be destroyed. He thought about what Aaron had said about honesty, about how rare it was in galactic diplomacy, about how she valued truth even when it was uncomfortable. Jiwon made his decision. He picked up his communicator and requested an immediate meeting with High Counselor Aaron. It was late, but this couldn't wait until morning. 20 minutes later, he stood in a private conference room with Aaron and 2 of her security guards. Kane was also there, looking concerned. Jiwon held the datapad in his hands. "I found this in my quarters tonight," he said without preamble. "Someone put it there while I was at our meeting today. It contains documents that appear to be classified Earth military files. They suggest that humanity plans to militarize the technology we're hoping to gain from the trade agreement." He handed the pad to Aaron. She took it and began reading, her colors shifting rapidly. Jiwon watched as she went through the files, her crystalline skin moving from blue to purple to dark red. The red wasn't a good sign. He had learned it indicated anger or distress. "These documents suggest deception," Kane said, reading over Aaron's shoulder. "They suggest everything you have told us this week was false, that humanity cannot be trusted." "I know what they suggest," Jiwon said, "but I don't think they're real. The writing is wrong. The classifications don't match Earth's actual system. Someone created these to look authentic, but they're not. This is a setup." "How convenient that you would claim they are false," Kane said coldly. "Perhaps you bring them to us now because you know we would discover them eventually. Perhaps this is damage control. If I wanted to hide them, I would have destroyed them." Jiwon shot back. "I brought them to you immediately because that's what honesty requires, even if it costs me everything. Even if it destroys the negotiations. You need to know someone is trying to sabotage this agreement." Aaron set down the datapad. Her colors had settled into a deep blue that Jiwon recognized as careful thought. "Who would benefit from destroying this agreement?" "The Kryloth Collective," one of the guards said. "They have opposed Veltari human cooperation from the beginning. They fear a united front would threaten their influence in this sector." "But how would they gain access to Corporal Kim's quarters?" Kane asked. "Council station security is strict." "Not strict enough, apparently," Jiwon said. "Look, I don't know who did this or how. I just know that someone wants you to doubt humanity. And I'm not going to let that happen without a fight." Aaron looked at him for a long moment. Her colors shifted through several shades before settling on a light gold. "This could be a test," she said quietly. "What do you mean?" Jiwon asked. "I mean that I could have orchestrated this myself. I could have planted these documents to see how you would respond. To test whether you would maintain your honesty even when facing ruin." Aaron stepped closer to him. "If you were calculating, if you were deceptive, you would have hidden these files, or destroyed them, or created an elaborate story about who planted them. But you simply brought them to me immediately and told me the truth, even knowing it could destroy everything." Jiwon felt like the ground had shifted under his feet. "Did you plant them? Is this a test?" "Answer my question first," Aaron said. "If you knew this was a test, if you knew that bringing these documents to me was the correct response that would prove your honesty, would that make your action less meaningful?" It was a complicated question. Jiwon thought about it carefully. "I guess it would depend on my motivation. If I brought them to you because I wanted to pass a test, that's calculated. But I brought them to you because hiding evidence that could affect your decision would be wrong. Even if I didn't know they were fake." "Even if they might be real, you needed to see them and make your own judgment." Aaron's entire crystalline form seemed to glow brighter. The gold in her colors intensified until it was almost blinding. "That is the answer I needed to hear." She turned to Kane and her guards. "The documents are false. I created them myself as a final test of human integrity. Every species we have encountered chooses survival over truth when pressed. They hide evidence. They create explanations. They calculate advantages. But Corporal Kim chose truth even knowing it would potentially destroy him and his people's chances of alliance. Kane's expression was unreadable. This was dangerous, High Counselor. If he had failed the test, the negotiations would have ended. Yes, Aaron agreed. That was the point. I needed to know with certainty that humanity could be trusted, not just in easy situations, but when everything was at stake. She looked back at Ji-won. You have passed every test I have given you this week. Your accidental honesty on the first day could have been luck. But this was a choice. You chose truth over safety. That is what we have been searching for. Ji-won felt anger rising in his chest. You played with the entire trade agreement just to test me? Months of work could have been destroyed. People on Earth are counting on the medicine and technology this agreement will provide. You risked all of that for a test? Yes, Aaron said simply. Her colors shifted to show what might have been regret. And I apologize for the deception, but understand that my people have been betrayed too many times. We needed certainty, not hope, not probability, certainty. And do you have it now? Ji-won asked. He was still angry, but he was also curious. Yes. Aaron gestured for her guards and Kane to leave the room. Once they were alone, she continued. The trade agreement was never the true goal of these negotiations. It was a preliminary step, a way to evaluate humanity without revealing our real interest. What real interest? Ji-won asked. Aaron moved to the window, looking out at the stars. My people have technology that could revolutionize human medicine. We can cure diseases you still struggle with. We can extend life, repair injuries, restore health in ways you cannot imagine. But this technology is also dangerous. In the wrong hands, it could be weaponized. It could be used to create biological weapons that would make your current arsenals look primitive. She turned back to face him. We will only share this technology with species we can trust absolutely. Not species we can control, not species we can manipulate, but species that will use the technology responsibly because it is the right thing to do. Because their character demands it. Ji-won began to understand. So all of this, the whole week of meetings, the questions about human nature and human morality, it was all leading to this? Yes. We were evaluating whether humanity has the character to be trusted with power, whether you would use such gifts wisely or exploit them. Aaron's colors showed that gold again. You have convinced me that humanity, despite all its flaws and contradictions, has the essential quality we have been searching for. You will do the right thing not because it benefits you, but because it is right. I'm just one person, Ji-won protested. You can't judge all of humanity based on me. Can I not? You are a product of your culture. Your instincts, your moral framework, your choices, they all come from being raised as a human among humans. If human society produces individuals like you, individuals like your sister who sacrificed herself for strangers, then perhaps humanity as a whole can be trusted. Aaron stepped closer. There is more. The formal signing ceremony was scheduled for the following evening. The trade agreement had been finalized, and representatives from dozens of species would attend to witness the historic moment. Ambassador Hyun was pleased with how everything had turned out, though he still seemed slightly bewildered by Ji-won's role in the success. Ji-won stood in his dress uniform, checking his appearance one last time before heading to the ceremony hall. He had accepted Aaron's offer to become the permanent liaison. It felt right even though it meant leaving behind everything familiar. He would tell his family after the ceremony. He hoped they would understand. The ceremony hall was magnificent. High ceilings arched overhead, decorated with crystalline structures that reflected light in rainbow patterns. Hundreds of beings from different species filled the space, their various forms and colors creating a scene that looked like something from a dream. The Veltari delegation stood on a raised platform at the front, with Aaron at the center. Her crystalline body gleamed in the ceremonial lighting. The human delegation took their positions opposite the Veltari. Ji-won stood with the other security personnel, including his squad members. Sergeant Danby Lee stood beside him, a solid and experienced soldier who had served on multiple stations. She gave him a slight nod of approval. She had heard about his new position and congratulated him earlier. Ambassador Hyun and High Counselor Aaron stepped forward to begin the signing ceremony. As they started the formal speeches, Ji-won felt a strange tension in the air. Something felt off, though he couldn't identify what. His combat training had taught him to trust his instincts. He scanned the crowd looking for anything unusual. The attack came without warning. Explosions ripped through two of the hall's side entrances simultaneously. The carefully controlled ceremonial atmosphere shattered into chaos. Beings screamed and ran in all directions. Through the smoke and debris, armored figures poured into the hall. They wore black combat suits marked with the symbols of the Kryloth Collective. Jiwan's body moved on instinct. He drew his weapon and positioned himself between the attackers and the Veltari platform. Danby and the other human security officers did the same, forming a defensive line without needing orders. They were only 5 soldiers, but they moved with the coordination of people who had trained together. The Kryloth soldiers numbered at least 30. They were heavily armed and moving with clear purpose. Their target was obvious. They were heading straight for High Counselor Aaron. "Protect the delegates," Danby shouted. She fired at the advancing Kryloth, dropping 2 of them. The other human soldiers opened fire as well, but they were vastly outnumbered. Jiwan saw one Kryloth raise a weapon directly at Aaron. She stood frozen on the platform, her security guards trying to move her to safety. But they wouldn't reach her in time. The Kryloth's weapon charged with a high-pitched whine. Plasma weapons. Deadly even to Veltari crystalline bodies, he didn't think. He just moved. Jiwan threw himself forward, covering the distance between his position and Aaron in 3 running steps. He hit her with his shoulder, knocking her to the side just as the plasma bolt fired. The superheated energy struck his armor directly in the chest. The impact felt like being hit by a shuttle. Jiwan flew backward and crashed onto the platform floor. His armor had dispersed most of the energy, but not all of it. His chest burned with pain that made it hard to breathe. But he was alive. And Aaron was alive. "Stay down," he gasped at her. His vision was blurry, but he could see her crystalline face above him, her colors flashing rapidly through patterns of distress. The fighting intensified. The Kryloth were pressing their advantage, trying to reach the platform. But something unexpected happened. The human security team didn't fall back. They didn't call for reinforcements and try to hold a position. Instead, they attacked. 5 human soldiers charged directly at 30 Kryloth operatives. Later, beings who witnessed the battle would struggle to describe what they saw. The humans fought with a ferocity that seemed impossible. When they were injured, they didn't slow down. When they were outnumbered, they didn't retreat. They fought like creatures possessed, using every trick and tactic they had learned in years of combat. Danby moved like a force of nature. She used her smaller size to her advantage, getting inside the Kryloth's guard and taking them down with brutal efficiency. When her weapon ran out of ammunition, she picked up a Kryloth weapon and kept fighting. When that weapon was damaged, she used her combat knife. Nothing stopped her. The other human soldiers showed the same terrifying determination. They covered each other instinctively, moving as a coordinated unit even in the chaos. When one soldier was injured, another immediately stepped into the gap. They protected the delegates not by holding a defensive position, but by being so aggressive that the Kryloth had to focus on them instead of their targets. Jiwan struggled to his feet, ignoring the pain in his chest. He couldn't let his squad fight alone. He raised his weapon and started firing, adding his shots to the defensive effort. Each breath hurt, but pain was just information. He could function through it. The Veltari security forces had recovered from the initial shock and were now entering the fight as well. But they moved with disciplined caution, taking defensive positions and laying down covering fire. Their tactics were sound and professional, but they were nothing like the chaotic, aggressive, almost reckless style of the human soldiers. The Kryloth began to falter. They had expected to overwhelm the defenders quickly. They hadn't expected 5 humans to fight like 50. They hadn't expected soldiers who treated a hopeless situation as simply another challenge to overcome. One Kryloth managed to break through and reach the platform. He pointed a weapon at Ambassador Yun. Before he could fire, Jiwan crashed into him from the side. They tumbled across the floor together. The Kryloth was larger and stronger, but Jiwan fought with desperation born of protecting others. He managed to knock the weapon away and deliver a strike that stunned his opponent, long enough for Veltari security to secure him. Station security forces finally arrived in large numbers. The Kryloth, seeing they had lost the element of surprise and facing reinforcements, retreated. They fell back through the damaged entrances, leaving behind several of their wounded. The entire attack had lasted less than 5 minutes, but it felt like hours. Jiwan stood on the platform, breathing hard, his armor scorched and damaged. Around him, the ceremony hall was in ruins, but the delegates were safe. All of them. 3 of the 5 human soldiers were wounded, but none were dead. It seemed impossible, but they had held the line. Erin approached him slowly. Her crystalline body was undamaged, though her colors showed patterns of intense emotion. She reached out and placed one hand on his damaged armor, right where the plasma bolt had struck. "You saved my life," she said. Her voice was quiet, but everyone on the platform could hear her. "You threw yourself into danger without hesitation, without calculation of survival probability. You simply acted to protect me. It's what we do," Jiwon said. His voice was rough from pain and smoke inhalation. "When someone is in danger, we help. We don't think about it." Danby climbed onto the platform, limping slightly from a leg wound. Blood ran down her arm from another injury, but she seemed unconcerned about it. "Is everyone secure?" she asked, all business. "The delegates are safe, Sergeant," Jiwon confirmed. "Thanks to you and the squad." Danby looked at the destroyed hall, at the unconscious Kryloth prisoners, at her own wounded soldiers. 5 against 30. Not bad odds for humans. She said it like it was just another day at work. Ambassador Hyon stepped forward, looking shaken but unharmed. "Corporal Kim, Sergeant Lee, all of you. That was the most incredible display of courage and skill I have ever witnessed. You saved not just the Veltari delegation, but this entire alliance. Earth will honor your actions." But Jiwon was looking at Erin. Her colors had settled into something he had never seen before. Deep violet mixed with bright gold, pulsing in complex patterns across her entire form. Her advisors, who had taken cover during the fighting, emerged and stared at her with expressions of shock. Kane approached and spoke quietly to Erin in their own language. She responded without taking her eyes off Jiwon. Kane's expression showed concern, but also something that might have been understanding. "What does that color mean?" Jiwon asked. He had learned many Veltari color patterns over the past week, but this one was new. "It is the color of profound respect," Erin said. "In our culture, we reserve it for those who demonstrate the highest virtues. Heroes, protectors, those who sacrifice themselves for others. I have never shown this color before in my life. I did not think I was capable of it, but you have proven me wrong about many things." The medics arrived and insisted on checking everyone for injuries. Jiwon's armor had saved him from the worst of the plasma bolt, but he had burns that needed treatment. As he was being led away for medical attention, Erin stopped him with a gentle touch on his arm. "You spoke by accident about my form a week ago," she said quietly. "But today you spoke through action about your character. Now I truly understand what makes humanity dangerous and valuable in equal measure. You survive because you protect each other. You win because you never stop fighting. You forge bonds because you act without calculatio." Jiwon spent 3 days in the medical wing, recovering from his injuries. The burns from the plasma bolt were healing well thanks to advanced medical technology that combined human and alien techniques. The doctor said he was lucky. A few centimeters to the left and the bolt would have missed his armor plating entirely. He would have been killed instantly. But Jiwon didn't feel lucky. He felt restless. The Kryloth attack had changed everything, and he was stuck in a hospital bed while decisions were being made about the future of the Alliance. Ambassador Hyon visited once to thank him personally and inform him that Earth was awarding him a medal for valor. The other security team members visited too, sharing jokes and war stories while conveniently ignoring their own injuries. But the visitor who came most often was Erin. She arrived every day, usually in the late evening when the medical wing was quiet. At first, she brought updates about the diplomatic situation. The Kryloth Collective was denying involvement in the attack despite clear evidence. The Council Station was investigating. Other species were taking sides, some supporting the Veltari-Human Alliance and others opposing it. But as the days passed, their conversations became less about politics and more about everything else. They talked about Veltari philosophy and human literature, about the nature of courage and the meaning of sacrifice, about their own lives and experiences. The conversations felt different from their earlier meetings, more personal, more honest if that was even possible. On the 3rd evening, Erin arrived later than usual. Her colors showed patterns that Jiwon had learned to recognize as concern mixed with determination. She sat in the chair beside his bed, an action that was becoming familiar. "The other Veltari counselors are worried about me," she said without preamble. "They say my colors have been showing patterns that are concerning. Specifically, they are concerned about the colors I display when I am near you. Jiwan shifted in his bed, trying to sit up straighter despite the lingering pain. The violet and gold? Yes, but not just that. There are subtle patterns within those colors, rhythms and combinations that have specific meanings in our culture. Erin's crystalline fingers traced patterns in the air as she spoke, as if drawing the colors she described. What you saw during the attack was profound respect, but what I have been showing since then is something deeper. We call it form bond resonance. You mentioned form bonds before, Jiwan said. You said observing someone's form was intimate in your culture. Is this related? It is the completion of that process, Erin explained. When Veltari develop deep connections, we first observe physical form. Then we come to understand essential form, the character and nature of a being. When both types of observation align, when we respect and appreciate both the physical and essential nature of another being, we develop form bond resonance. It is our equivalent of what humans might call love, though the concept is not quite the same. Jiwan's heart beat faster. Are you saying you've developed this for me? My body does not lie, Arn said simply. The colors are involuntary responses to what I feel. My advisors can read them as easily as you might read emotions on a human face. They know that I have formed a bond with you that goes beyond professional respect or political alliance. That's impossible, Jiwan said, though he felt his own emotions contradicting his words. We're different species. Our biologies are completely incompatible. You're a high counselor leading negotiations for an empire. I'm a soldier who happened to say the wrong thing at the right time. This can't work. Erin's colors shifted to a pattern that looked almost like amusement. You sound like my advisors. They have given me all the same logical arguments. Different species, different positions, different worlds. But logic and emotion do not always align, do they? You taught me that. Humans feel things that defy logic, and yet those feelings drive you to accomplish impossible things. She leaned forward slightly. I am developing feelings that my people would say are illogical. But I have watched you speak truth when it cost you everything. I have watched you throw yourself in front of a plasma weapon to protect me. I have spent hours talking with you about everything from philosophy to poetry, and my body responds with colors that show form bond resonance. Perhaps that is illogical, but it is also real. Jiwan was quiet for a moment, processing what she was saying. Then he spoke the truth that he had been avoiding. I'm developing feelings too. I don't know if they're the same as what you feel. I don't know if human emotions and Veltari form bonds are even comparable. But when I talk to you, I feel like I'm talking to someone who really understands me. When I'm near you, I want to be closer. When I think about leaving the station eventually, the idea of not seeing you again feels wrong. Then perhaps we are not so different, Erin said. Her colors brightened to warm golds. Perhaps the form of emotion is less important than the fact that we both feel it. But how would this even work? Jiwan asked. You live on your homeworld. I'm supposed to be your liaison, which means I'd be there too, but as an outsider. A human among Veltari, and we can't have a relationship in any traditional sense. Our biologies don't allow for it. Human relationships are built on physical intimacy in ways that Veltari bonds are not, Aaron acknowledged. But that does not mean we cannot form a connection that is meaningful to both of us. Veltari express intimacy through observation and presence, through understanding and shared experience. These things are possible between us. She stood and moved closer to his bed. My people value form, the physical expression of being. Your people value heart, the emotional core of existence. Perhaps we are not incompatible. Perhaps we complement each other. You can teach me about emotion and instinct. I can teach you about observation and understanding. Together we might create something new, something the galaxy has not seen before. Jiwan looked up at her, at the way the light reflected through her crystalline body, at the patterns of color that moved across her like living art. What do your advisors say about this? They say I am being irrational, that I am letting personal feelings interfere with my duties, that a relationship between a Veltari High Counselor and a human soldier is unprecedented and potentially problematic. Aaron's colors showed determination, but they also say that if anyone could make an unprecedented relationship work, it would be someone who values truth and honesty above all else. Someone who acts from instinct rather than calculation. Someone like you. There's still the practical problem, Jiwan said. My duty is to Earth, to the security forces. I can't just abandon that for personal desires no matter how much I might want to. Aaron's colors shifted to show what might have been satisfaction. That is why I have been working with Ambassador Hyon and your military command over the past 3 days. The liaison position I offered you is being formalized as a joint military posting. You would serve both Earth and Veltar. Your duty and your personal wishes would align. You've been planning this, Jiwon said, understanding dawning. While I've been in here recovering, you've been arranging everything. I learned from watching humans fight, Aaron said. You do not accept impossible situations. You find ways to make things work. So I stopped thinking about all the logical reasons why this could not work and started finding practical solutions to make it possible. Jiwon laughed, then winced as the movement pulled at his healing injuries. That's probably the most human thing I've heard you say. Perhaps you are influencing me, Aaron said. Her colors showed warmth. Just as I hope to influence you. That is what bonds do. They change both beings involved. They create something new from the connection. I'm still afraid this won't work, Jiwon admitted. There are so many ways it could fail. So many complications we haven't even thought of yet. Fear is reasonable, Aaron agreed. But you taught me that humans feel fear and act anyway. They protect others despite being afraid. They form connections despite knowing those connections might cause pain. They try impossible things despite the risk of failure. Can you not apply that same courage to this situation? Jiwon thought about his sister Sora, about the choice she made to protect strangers even though she was surely afraid, about all the conversations he had with Aaron about human nature and human courage, about the fact that he was lying in a hospital bed because he had thrown himself in front of a plasma weapon without thinking about the consequences. I'm not very good at being logical about these things, he finally said. I act on instinct, on feeling, on what seems right even when it seems impossible. I know, Aaron said. That is one of the things I find most fascinating about you. You embody the very qualities that make humanity valuable to the galaxy. Emotion over calculation, courage over caution, connection over isolation. She extended her hand toward him. The gesture was very human, something she must have learned from observing Earth customs. Jiwon reached out and took her hand carefully. Her crystalline skin was cool and smooth, completely different from human skin. But the gesture felt right. It felt like a connection being acknowledged and accepted. So we try this? Jiwon asked. Even though we don't know how it will work? Even though everyone will think we're crazy? We try, Aaron confirmed. Her colors blazed with golds and violets. We create something. 6 months had passed since the attack on Council Station. 6 months since Jiwon's life had changed completely. He stood now in the observation deck of the Veltari homeworld's primary diplomatic facility, looking out at a city that still seemed alien despite his time here. Crystalline towers rose into a purple sky, reflecting light in patterns that never existed on Earth. Veltari citizens moved through the streets below, their bodies creating moving rainbows of color. Lieutenant Jiwon Kim. The promotion had come through 3 months ago, along with his formal assignment as Chief Liaison Officer between Earth and Veltar. He led a team of 20 humans now, all dedicated to the cultural exchange program that was transforming relations between the two species. Some taught Veltari citizens about human customs and thinking. Others learned Veltari technology and philosophy to bring back to Earth. It was challenging work, but it was changing the galaxy. You're thinking too hard again, a familiar voice said behind him. Jiwon turned to see Aaron entering the observation deck. Her colors showed the warm golds and soft blues that he had learned meant contentment and affection. Even after 6 months, seeing her still made his heart beat faster. Just reflecting on how much has changed, Jiwon said. 6 months ago, I was a corporal standing guard duty. Now I'm responsible for the most important cultural exchange in human history. Aaron moved to stand beside him at the window. They maintained a careful distance in public, aware that others were watching. Their relationship was known but still developing its own protocols. And 6 months ago, I believed that logic and calculation were the only paths to success. Now I understand that emotion and instinct have their own wisdom. The Veltari people had been surprisingly accepting of their High Counselor's unusual connection with a human. Some were skeptical, but most were intrigued. They saw Jiwon as a symbol of the alliance, the human who spoke by accident and changed history. Children's stories were being written about it, though Jiwon found that embarrassing. The joint military training session went well today, Jiwon reported, shifting to business matters. It was easier than talking about personal things in the diplomatic facility, where anyone might overhear. Sergeant Danby says the Veltari soldiers are adapting to human tactical thinking faster than expected. And the Veltari combat instructors report that human soldiers are learning our discipline and patience, Aaron added. The combination is creating something remarkable. Warriors who can think tactically like humans but execute with Veltari precision. The military cooperation had been one of the most successful aspects of the alliance. Human soldiers trained alongside Veltari warriors, each learning from the other. The humans brought aggressive tactics, adaptability, and unbreakable determination. The Veltari brought advanced technology, strategic thinking, and centuries of combat philosophy. Together, they were becoming a formidable force. But it wasn't just military cooperation that was transforming both species. The cultural exchange went deeper. Veltari citizens were learning to express emotions more openly, influenced by human authenticity. They were beginning to value instinct and feeling alongside logic. Meanwhile, humans were learning Veltari patience and observation. They were discovering that sometimes careful thought was better than immediate action. The research facilities are producing results faster than anyone predicted, Aaron said. The medical technology we shared has already saved thousands of human lives. And human innovative thinking has helped us solve problems we've struggled with for decades, Jiwan smiled. Humans are good at improvising. We don't always follow the logical path, which means we sometimes find solutions that logical thinking would miss. Exactly, Aaron agreed. Her colors brightened slightly. This is why the alliance works. We complement each other's weaknesses and strengthen each other's abilities. A message alert chimed on Jiwan's communication device. He checked it and his expression grew serious. Intelligence report. The Kryloth Collective is building a coalition. They're recruiting species that feel threatened by our alliance. It looks like they're preparing for something big. Aaron's colors shifted to darker blues, showing concern. We expected this. The alliance between our peoples has upset the power balance in this sector. Other species are choosing sides. Are we ready if they attack? Jiwan asked. The Joint Defense Force is stronger than any military either of our species has fielded alone, Aaron said. But war is always uncertain, especially when facing a coalition of multiple species. Jiwan looked back out at the crystalline city. 6 months ago, he wouldn't have imagined caring so deeply about protecting an alien world. But now this place felt like a second home. The Veltari felt like people he was responsible for protecting. That's what connections did. They made you care about things beyond yourself. There's a memorial service tonight, Jiwan said, changing the subject, for those who died in the Council Station attack. Both human and Veltari casualties. I'm supposed to give a speech. I know, Aaron said. I will be there as well. What will you say? The truth, Jiwan said simply. It's worked so far. That evening, the memorial hall was filled with beings from both species. Humans in their dress uniforms stood alongside Veltari in their ceremonial forms. Families of the fallen sat in the front rows. The atmosphere was somber, but also carried a sense of unity. These people had died defending an alliance that was now changing the galaxy. Jiwan stood at the podium, looking out at the assembled crowd. Ambassador Hyon sat in the front row, along with Aaron and the senior military commanders from both species. Danby and the other security team members who had fought at Council Station sat together, their injuries healed, but their memories of that day still sharp. 6 months ago, I made a mistake, Jiwan began. His voice carried through the hall clearly. I spoke without thinking about what I saw in High Counselor Aaron. I commented on her appearance in a way that was inappropriate by Veltari standards. I was embarrassed. I was certain I had caused a disaster. He paused, gathering his thoughts. But that accident taught me something important. Truth, even when it's awkward or uncomfortable or spoken at the wrong time, builds stronger foundations than the most carefully crafted lies. When I spoke accidentally, I spoke honestly, and that honesty became the foundation for everything that followed. Jiwan looked at the memorial wall behind him, where names of the fallen were displayed in both human and Veltari writing. The people we honor today died because others tried to destroy what honesty built. The Kryloth Collective attacked because they feared an alliance based on genuine trust rather than political calculation. They failed because they didn't understand what makes such alliances strong. He turned back to the audience. I've learned many things in the past 6 months. I've learned that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the choice to protect others despite it. I've learned that different species can form connections that transcend biology and culture. I've learned that the impossible becomes possible when people are willing to try. Erin stood and moved to stand beside him at the podium. Her colors showed the deep violet and gold that the entire galaxy had come to recognize as her response to humanity's virtues. "And I have learned that logic alone is insufficient," she said. "My people valued calculation and careful analysis. We trusted nothing that could not be proven. But Corporal Kim, now Lieutenant Kim, showed us that some of the most valuable qualities cannot be calculated. Courage, honesty, the willingness to sacrifice for others. These things must be felt and believed." She looked at Jiwon, then back at the crowd. "The humans have a saying, actions speak louder than words. When the Kryloth attacked, 5 human soldiers faced 30 armed operatives. Logic said they should retreat and wait for reinforcements. Calculation said their survival probability was minimal, but they did not calculate. They simply acted to protect others. That is humanity's gift to the galaxy," Jiwon continued. "And the Veltari have given humanity gifts as well. Technology that saves lives, wisdom that comes from centuries of experience, patience and discipline that temper our impulsiveness. This alliance works because both species bring something valuable. We don't just trade goods or share technology. We share ourselves, our best qualities and even our flaws." He gestured to the memorial wall. "These people died protecting that exchange. They died so that humans and Veltari could continue learning from each other, so that other species might see that cooperation based on genuine trust is possible. Their sacrifice wasn't just for their own people. It was for a better galaxy." The hall was completely silent. Beings from both species listened with full attention. Even the children present seemed to understand the importance of the moment. "I spoke by accident 6 months ago," Jiwon said, his voice quieter now. "But perhaps the best truths are the ones we don't plan to speak. Perhaps the most important moments come from instinct rather than calculation. What started as an embarrassing mistake became a friendship, then a partnership, then an alliance that is changing the galaxy. And it all happened because someone was willing to be honest even by accident." Erin placed her hand on his shoulder, a gesture that had become familiar between them.